Yeah, mute, perfect, okay.
Percy's about to kill a bear.
Mute, great, okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, I've known David for... Please be quiet, Sean and Kelly. Thank you. Not that I'm going to wrap you over the knuckles, but... Okay, so who was David Davis? What are the facets of Dave that I want to talk about tonight? Well, I think we can all agree he was a bit of an original. He was a bit of a character. He sort of trod his own path. And first thing I want to bring up, I know it's just calm down, anti-presentation people, is this guy Aristippus. And who was he? Well, he was a mate of Socrates in the 4th century BC. And his catchphrase was, and I've written it down here, pleasure is the only virtue in life, pain is the only evil. Yes, he was the godfather of hedonism. And I think we can definitely agree that Davis had a streak of hedonism that rang through him, that he adhered to. Admirable trait. He lived absolutely by that. Whoever's laughing, that's fine, mute yourself. But his hedonism, I think, was not selfish hedonism. Like whenever he was enjoying himself, he would usually want other people to join in, and he was generous to a fault to his friends, very inclusive. And that leads me on to the second strand of who was David Davis, which is humanism, this belief in humanity over some divine beings. So I think David was fiercely atheistic, but really I see him as the psychedelic Renaissance man, because his interests totally spanned arts and sciences. You know, he was a keen horticulturalist and chemist, and he wasn't. He didn't just listen to music and enjoy it like some of us. He actually created it and was pretty good at it. Let's be honest. And even in his growing of psilocybin, is that what it's called, Shawnee? No, don't unmute yourself. He was pretty scientific, and you know, he was always observing his results. And some of my fondest memories with David are from like Wednesday evenings, going around to his house and fiddling with these bloody fungi in these contraptions in a box, and you know, just sitting around listening to music and playing with his dog. That's kind of the guy that he was. So another key aspect of David, I think, is his unforgettable laugh, which was sort of maniacal and also a little bit infectious, right? He started laughing. He had this, it was a sort of, where's this going laugh. Sometimes it could be anarchic, sometimes it could be warmer than that. But my video collection of David is really incredibly weak, but I've reached out to Shawnee. I want to play a clip of his laugh because I think it will bring us back to him, or bring him back to us. It's from Sean, so it's got mostly Sean just laughing in it, but it's a goodie nonetheless. It's about 2/3 of the way through. You will hear him. Hopefully you can hear the audio.
Oi. Taking secret video.
Now why doesn't that surprise me?
Someone do something exciting.
Oh, here you go.
Someone do something exciting.
It's a strange thing to zoom in on, but that for me was an absolute key part of David. And then I think the reason why he got along so well with British and Australian people, I was thinking about it, is he sort of had a self-deprecating sense of humor. He wasn't afraid of sending himself up or being laughed at, being laughed at and laughing with, right? So this making fun of himself exhibited itself a bunch of times, and one of the funniest for me was at JB's Bachelor Do in 2008. Now, some people like go to Vegas and have stripper parties or whatever, but JB had a tricycle race, and we were racing across Wash Park, and it was a baton race kind of thing, and Davis was the last man in, and he was easily the biggest chap and the oldest person there to ride these tricycles. And I've got a little clip because he ends up, spoiler alert, he ends up on his back with this tricycle with his legs in the air like an upturned beetle. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind me showing this clip now. So here we go.
Oh, that's it, good work, good work. Come on, Rog! Just
There goes JB. I'm not sure what JB's doing.
Good job.
But
Good work, good job, good job, good job.
these grainy videos are like 1970s.
It's just not looking good for us, boys.
Here he is. Shut up, Ash. But the point is, and I've stopped it there, but he totally laughed along with everyone else, you know, potentially humiliating situations he was not afraid of putting himself into, which is something to be admired. Let's roll out the rest of the video. Davey's gonna like that.
Sorry, boys.
I don't know which team I was on. Okay. Oh yes, the only other video I've got of Dave was we took him up skiing, and I don't think he'd been skiing maybe ever, maybe when he was a kid or something, but he was game to do it. And not that this is going to be just the list of videos humiliating Davis. Honestly, it will be the last, but it shows part of the character that he was.
Stay right a little bit. Nice. Look at that form. He's got the bent knee.
There's Katie.
He's going between the two trees here.
Now, those people who know skiing might know that his stance is staying the same.
You can go between the two trees.
He looks like he's sort of shuffling sideways.
Woohoo!
Maybe a cut.
Woo! It hasn't gone so well for Davis in the end. Here he comes, walking down to Midvale. Here are his skis. There is Midvale.
Now, again, I'm not putting him on the spot, but the guy would do. Here's a photo of him at the end, where some people might have stomped off, walked away, gone off in a huff. Here's Dave with clutching a martini at the bottom, having had to hike his way out of it and you know, ride the lift down. And we've got Shawnee in the Green Goblin outfit too. Okay. Another key part of Dave for me was that he was just a caring and compassionate guy. So he was a committed vegetarian. He loved his dogs, you know, just all around great character for caring about things. A particular memory, I was one of the first times I went out with him downtown to a pub. He gave me a lift in his shiny sports car, and I nearly sat on these boxes in his two-seater car, and he's like, watch out, and put them aside. And then halfway down towards downtown, he said, do you mind if we go via Stapleton, which is not particularly on the way? And what had actually happened, these boxes contained mice that he'd trapped in his house. He was sort of feeding them and he wanted to set them free in a field and give them the best chance to make a new start of it. This was at the same time that JB and I were sort of executing mice in various ways. So it just really, you know, nice guy. What can you say? That said, as soft as he was, I think he was pretty tough and he was pretty resilient. When I think of a couple of his things there, one was in the Great Recession, or what we then now call, it's probably the small recession now, but in the Great Recession, he lost his job as a project manager, was unemployed for a while, and he taught himself PHP, I don't know why that one, and became a developer, right? So he totally picked himself up off the floor and soldiered on, which was a good effort. And then I remember in about 2012, 13, he going over to his house, and there was a letter from the IRS, and he'd been contracting 1099ing, doing this PHP stuff, and he hadn't paid his taxes and owed the IRS like 55 grand. He's got a bill for 55 grand. I'm like, how are you going to pay that? And he said, bitch, please, they're not going to take my house. And you know what? He actually got out of this bill, which is crazy. I mean, he paid a tiny bit and ultimately got forgiven. So there's hope for us all. And yeah, back to the anarchic. His last time I went there in October, he had a fancy electric car, and I said, where do you charge that? And he said, oh, Jeff Bezos pays for it or something. I'm like, what do you mean? And it doesn't have a garage. Like, how the hell are you charging this thing? He was driving it into Whole Foods every week and parking it for 4 hours. That's how he charged his car. This was sort of sticking it to the man. Yeah. So when I go through my texts of the last X years with him, obviously, as I said before, he's a humanist and atheist, but he often would sign his text to me, Jesus loves you, obviously, ironically. But really, I take the Jesus out of that. Really, looking through the photos, he loved and he was loved. You know, this is the second wake. So there was already a wake last week that everybody missed. No, from his college friends. I mean, here's a guy that was really liked and you know, and loved in return. So I'm going to show a slide, and he will be missed. I'm going to show a video of some photos that came from my site, Frosty's. Apologies, a couple of things. Number one, I'm in a bunch of them. Number two, everyone's boozing in all of them. Apparently that's what we used to do. And yeah, number three, Reggie put out a ton of photos this afternoon, but it was too late because I'd already made this thing and I was hiking with the kids or whatever. So sorry about that, Reggie. But everyone here on this call is in at least one of the photos, probably. So let's get on to that. So it's 6 or 7 minutes, and it's got, or 5 or 6 minutes, it's got his serotonin trance music. So grab yourself a drink, start bopping, and when we return, we'll pass the mic over to JB, who is going to do another eulogy and a reading. R.I.P. David Davis. You just...
I think I can just
do it.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, everybody. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Jonathan Hartley. I'm a friend of David. Like all of us, I guess I wanted to say David was shaped by his own passage through life. But unlike the rest of us idiots, he emerged from that a bit of a rarity. For all his frivolity, he had you know, some deeply held views. As Phil mentioned, he was a devout humanist. Well, he believed in everyone having the freedom to make their own choices, you know, free from the judgment of others. And as part of that philosophy, he was boundlessly generous, as everyone who knew him knows. And he was kind. He was kind all the time, as we've all experienced. He reminds me, when I think of him, that the value of a life is not in our achievements or the comfort we surround ourselves with, but in how much we give and how we treat each other. David believed in looking after people, and he especially believed in looking after people's happiness. If there was something he could do to increase someone else's happiness, he would do it. So yeah, he could always be relied upon to get the party started in his own particular way, and he was always surrounded by gales of laughter. In short, he was a very good friend, and I shall miss him. I was going to give a humanist reading to represent David's beliefs on matters of life and death. But the more I thought about it, the more I kept returning to the idea of Edna Millie's first fig. So, my candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But ah, my foes, and oh, my friends, it gives a lovely light.